Ladies and gentlemen, if you're all not aware, at the time of recording today, it is Mother's Day. And boy, oh boy, did Jeff Keighley and Kuro Games give us quite the gift for this special day. Because if you're not all aware by now, there have been some pretty big leaks, or really official news coming from Kuro Games. And that is, of course, a sneak preview of Cartethyia and her kit. And so instead of watching it on here, where I think it's like a little bit lower quality, we've actually got the whole video on Reddit. And what I wanted to do today was actually go through all of it with you, talk a little bit about the crazy shit that we're going to be seeing. And then from there, actually draw some comparisons to some past gacha titles where we've seen some similar things in their kit, talk about what Cartethia's kit means as a whole, and of course, compare it to some other releases that are coming in some other games. And so with that, let's go ahead, let's turn out the volume because there is actually some sound coming through with this bad boy. And let's just get right on into it and see what Kuro's got in store for us, ladies and gentlemen. So, first things first, actually, before we even play the video, I think it's quite clear that this area that it's actually being filmed in, this arena, is not something that we have in the game. Obviously, I don't have 100% exploration everywhere, but I think it's pretty clear that this is actually in the new region that's going to be releasing in 2.4. We essentially know for sure that Septimont, that area adjacent to Raguna, is going to be a new probably big map expansion that's coming in 2.4. And so they've actually leaked more than Cartethia's kit with this one. They've actually showed us a little bit of the new area. So that's just something to keep in mind before we head on into it. Let's keep going. All right, just getting a nice little round view of the model. And you can clearly see, right, this is like some sort of gladiator arena they have going on over here. This is probably where Lupa hangs out, considering that she is like the gladiator of the region. All right. So as you can see over there, that's just Cartethia's basic attack chain. I think they're just repeating the same thing twice.
Oceans.
And let's just really quickly see what her weapon is. Yeah, she's just using a regular basic sword, so they're not actually teasing the design of her signature at all. Yeah, no actual teasing of her signature. Let's actually turn down the volume a little bit too. It's a little bit loud.
Oceans.
And that's her liberation animation. And as you can see, yeah, it's the same photo. That is straight up just going to be Cartethyia transforming into Fleur-de-Lis. She's got like her own special, I don't know, like magical girl animation over here. This is pretty nuts. This is pretty crazy. And then that animation, if you're all familiar with the 2.2 main story quest, that's like almost the exact same thing there. And as far as I'm concerned, there's one VA doing both of these.
Oceans.
Yeah, that's one VA doing the lines for both forms. And so she's doing like the, the younger version of Cartethyia, and she's also doing like that, really kind of like raspy, malevolent sounding version when she's in the big form as well. So yeah, I would say WVA for this one. Amanda Rishel, yeah, the voice range is absolutely absurd here. And so now we're going to take a look at the second form and some of the mechanics that we're going to be seeing over there. So as you can see, she's got like a basic attack chain that, for all I'm seeing, right? A basic attack chain that eventually lifts her up into the air, summons some sort of like black hole and like some cubes, and then she does some sort of enhanced plunge attack. And so right off the bat, I have no idea what to even think about all of the different damage types that we're seeing. All I know is that these animations are freaking insane. And she does that enhanced plunge over here, right? That's going to summon the sword. So that's what her basic attack chain, what I'm imagining is. I think they're just spamming left click, like how they spammed left click for Cartethyia over here. That's what it's going to look like. And now here's going to be the part that I think that broke the internet. This is the part that everyone is freaking out about. This is going to be her second liberation animation. The first one transformed her, and now this is the second one. Yeah. She brings her sword up into the air, turns the entire screen black and white, and then proceeds to slash down. And as far as I'm concerned, she just split the earth in half. You can sort of see over here, that is the outline being left by the attack, and it's going all the way through outside of the arena. I have no idea how far this goes. People will probably have to check. They'll probably cast the ability on one side of the map and then go to like a waypoint on the other side and then see if the line is still there. Because holy moly, you'll just see over here. Yeah, it just lasts until the end of the demo. It doesn't disappear. So I'm gonna be real here. This is one of the greatest ultimate animations, I think, not just in Wuthering Waves, but in gacha gaming as a whole. And I think the best part about all of this is just like the level of care that they put into the animations to make it really resonate with the actual boss fight that we had with her. Let me look up a Cartethyia cinematic really fast. Let me look it up really fast. Okay, we got a video by Narushio over here kind of outlining it. You'll notice so many of like these similar animations. Like this is her liberation move that she does. It's literally basically the same exact moves that we saw firsthand in that demo. And obviously Rover's not going to be in there. But like this is the sort of stuff that they're doing, and that's how they're taking this playable boss and they're actually letting you use their moves. But I'm going to be honest, this is just a cinematic, and I feel like in-game it actually looks better. I don't know. I feel like in-game it kind of actually looks better. So we were already blown away by what the boss was doing, and they've actually just made it even better when we're using them as a playable unit. So, I mean, it's all incredibly well done. It's all looking super good. They even got, like, the whole, like, Easter eggs. We all know Cartethyia has the 3 swords. You can see that the swords are actually merging into one. All of these swords are actually merging into one to create that gigantic blade that she's using to swing down. So they even have, like, all the throwbacks to the actual story and the stuff that we were doing in Avenolium. Right, you heard like the chunks as the swords start combining, and this is the massive fucking move that we have coming right after that. And so now that we've taken a look, we've broken down some of the animations, we talked about some of the Easter eggs, and you know, obviously the incredible crazy shit that is going on over here. Oh my goodness, one last thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that these swords continually get summoned while she's in the big form. I'm not sure if this is like a core mechanic of her kit. It seems like it would make sense. A sword gets summoned over here. A sword gets summoned over here. And then naturally, during her liberation, right, it looks like a third sword gets summoned over here. Maybe that's actually all 3 of them. But maybe that is some sort of core mechanic that's going to be, you know, used in her kit that's going to, in one way or another, have some sort of impact on her gameplay. Just the sheer number of times that we're seeing these swords, they sort of almost look out of place, but they still look like they fit in. I think that that's maybe like her forte circuit or something like that. We don't know a lot from what we're seeing over here. We just saw some of the cool animations, a couple of basic attack chains by the units, but we didn't see anything like their forte circuit, their inherent skills, anything else other than, you know, some pretty ridiculous looking moves. And so with that, let's go ahead and actually draw some comparisons, right? And I think a big one that a lot of people are talking about, just because, well, it is sort of like the flavor of the month, is the Honkai Star Rail collab and Saber. And I'm gonna be real here, right? I thought that this looked pretty neat. It was a nice little reference when it first released, but now we just gotta take a look at this in relation to what we just saw for Cartethyia. It's okay. I mean, I think it's cool that you see, like, the sword swing down, but it's kind of just, like, it almost seems, like, overly animated. They made it as close as possible to the source material. Well, I guess this is the thing, right? Maybe it'll look better when there are enemies in here to actually hit, but for me, it kind of just looks like a little bit too bright, a little bit too loud. And this whole, like, startup animation over here, it felt like it could have been a little bit more hype. It looks exactly like it does in the anime. Okay. Okay. Alright. Well, there's a reason why I proceeded to say HSR Saber's got nothing on Cartethyia. Because I'm going to be real here, man. I'm just going to be entirely honest with you. It's kind of just... it kind of just looks better. I don't know. It being faster almost makes it seem more powerful too. I also really like the impact frames that we got going on over here, where the screen literally will turn like black and white to sort of indicate just how much strength is going into the blow. I think the lack of impact frames on this do make it feel a little bit lacking. And I do know they're trying to make it as close to the source material as possible, but I don't think there's a single impact frame in this entire animation, right? That black and white coloring actually does add a lot to moves like this. So, I don't know. Maybe HSR will take inspiration. Maybe they'll put in a frame or two of that black and white after seeing what Wuthering Waves has in store for us. Now, let's move on to the next comparison that we're going to be having over here, and that's actually to Punishing Gray Raven. And this is a character that's actually really old. I made sure to look for the oldest footage that I could find. It's by Aaliyah. And this is Bianca Stigmata, who, again, was released 2 years ago. And you might be familiar with what I'll be showing you over here. Just take a look at this. And so, naturally, right? It's pretty similar. It's pretty similar. Not nearly as hype as Cartethyia. I will agree with you. It's not nearly as hype as Cartethia's. I think that Cartethyia does take it to the next level, but that's kind of where it is. The last comparison that we'll be drawing it back to is, well, it's a little bit on, it's on a different note. And this one's actually going to be, ladies and gentlemen, Bianca Stigmata, and then actually Saber Alter. If you guys have seen Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel, I feel like this is kind of like the one that feels the most actually reminiscent of everything. I would say that Saber from like just like the regular Fate series or Fate Zero, not really the relationship we want to draw over here. That's how it looks like in the Heaven's Feel movies. And I think that this one, it's clearly a lot different, right? From like the regular Excalibur that we saw. And I think this is the one that kind of feels like the biggest reference between everybody over here. So yeah, that's just a little bit of fun. That's just a little bit of comparisons. Obviously, you know, some people will prefer this one just because it's a nice little homage to the anime. But I'm going to be real over here. I feel like the animation work, the quality, and, you know, the references to the story in this one, it feels like it stands out on top. But people are going to have their personal opinions about it. Now, the last part that I want to talk about over here is, of course, what this preview means for your account and sort of the future of Wuthering Waves from here. I'm going to be honest. Whatever damage type this move is, be it Liberation, Heavy, Skill, or Basic Attack, I will be maximizing that stat on my Echoes. Because what I want this move to do is I want it to proceed to do as much damage. I want to see this do like 300, 400, 500k. I need this attack to be the hardest hitting move in my kit at S0R1. And what that means is that you're probably going to need to do some pretty heavy grinding across your Echoes. And the assumption is, right, ladies and gentlemen, the assumption is that, well, Fleur-de-Lis is going to be using Remini Fleur-de-Lis. And the fact of the matter is, hopefully, they do reveal some sort of information about the damage type that she's going to be using soon, so you can make sure that you search for the right substat in your damage rolls to actually make that possible. Because boy, oh boy, what I'm thinking right now is it's just going to be Liberation damage. Because we don't have an Arrow Liberation damage dealer, and that would be something that is pretty cool. Might have like some synergy even with a character like John Shin or something like that. But for right now, I'm still in the middle of actually grinding and building out this set, and I think I'll be able to specialize a bit more once time kind of passes by and more info is revealed. The next thing is that it could also scale with erosion damage, because as we're all pretty clear, as it's pretty clear over here, Remini Fleur-de-Lis is on the Gusts of Vulcan set, which heavily synergizes with Arrow Erosion. And so if all of those attacks, if all of those moves do end up scaling with Liberation damage or Arrow Erosion damage, there's going to be one character in particular that you're going to have to keep in mind if you're looking to deal as much damage as possible, assuming she scales with Erosion. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is of course going to be Kachona. Because I'm going to be honest here, if any of those moves scale with erosion damage, then Kachona's outro skill, which just straight up increases arrow erosion damage received by targets by 100%, amplifies that damage, is going to be pretty important. And so a lot of people are just naturally assuming, with Gusts of Welcome being the arrow erosion set, that Cartethyia, with her sword being on the set, is going to scale or have some sort of synergy with that status effect. And so with that in mind, I know a lot of people, especially after seeing these animations, are in the mindset, oh boy, yep, time to skip everything. Time to skip everybody. I'm not going to pull on Kachona. I am not going to pull on the Phase 2 anniversary banners. Jinsei, Brandt, Rosia, Chang Li, they can all just go fuck themselves because I'm saving all of my pulls for what's going on over here. But I do just suggest, if you do have some leftover stuff, maybe if you just want to build pity and see if you get lucky, I highly recommend you go ahead and maybe explore just pulling a couple of times on Kachona's banner. At the very least, maybe just like build up pity on it, get close to the pity, and if you end up getting her, great. If you end up losing the 50-50 early, that's also great. That means you'll be guaranteed for your Cartethyia. But I would just say you gotta at least like give it a shot, because if that synergy is there and then, you know, you do end up a little bit disappointed that you didn't end up pulling her before and then you end up with some extra pulls later, because as we all know, a new region typically gives a lot of pulls from the exploration, right? That's what happened in 2.0, and that's what happened in 1.0, and 2.4 is looking pretty beefy on its own. You do get a lot of pulls from exploration, and chances are it could actually be that you were able to afford Kachona anyways, but you decided to overly save, and the end result is that, you know, you don't have a character that you actually could have afforded. The last thing is that, let's be honest here, Cartethyia is a sword user. And if you're a sword user, that means that you typically don't have to end up pulling the signature weapon of a 5-star sword user. I don't know any unit in the game that's not going to be able to benefit in some way from a weapon like Emerald of Genesis. And I think it's pretty much a fact that Emerald of Genesis can be an easy sub-in for any sword user's 5-star and will get you a high level of overall performance, enough to clear the TOA, enough to clear any sort of endgame content that you have available. And so that means that for Cartethyia, her signature, at least in my opinion, even without seeing any of her stuff, her signature is probably not going to be entirely necessary. You can probably just use Emerald of Genesis instead, and as it's pretty clear over here, right? Emerald of Genesis is actually going to look pretty good on her as well from an aesthetic point of view, because, I mean, she's blue and gold, and then the weapon is literally blue and gold. So that's just something to keep in mind. You might be able to have some big savings over there if you're somebody that typically pulls S0R1. And so I would just say, yeah, you might think that this is me just shilling Kachona and then shilling the potential synergy. But I think at this point, if you do have the funds, if you are willing to build up a little bit of pity, I don't see if you can lose. I don't feel like you can lose very much from just giving this a bit of a look. So that's going to be that. That's going to be our entire overview. That's going to be our breakdown of all of this crazy shit that we just saw Mr. Jeff Keighley, Mr. Game Awards guy, coming out with over the past couple of hours. And so with that, if this was helpful, let me know. Peace out.